Good mid-afternoon. It's Angelica Hernandez. Actually, it's Dr. Angelica Hernandez. I realize that I have not included that in my introduction. I have a Ph.D. in education. Like academic research is what I did for the past several years of my collegiate experience. And before that, I did a master's degree in developmental psychology from UCLA, both from UCLA. And then before that, I did a degree in child development at Whittier College, and that was an incredible experience. So I don't know why I'm qualifying, but I just think it's important to just kind of say who I am and what I have to offer, I guess. But what I want to talk about today is, first of all, I think I'm pretty angry about some things. Just because, I hear things on the radio, I hear conversations, and sometimes I just want to just remind people, where we have come from and what our history is. And when I say that, I think I'm talking about race, and I'm talking about our perspective of our relationship in the United States to African Americans, to Latinos, to immigrants in general, just anyone who white America thinks of as other. And today I was listening to the radio. It was just on the radio, and I heard someone talking about they were challenging the idea of, whether what if segregation was a good idea, and what if, that there's some proof that people of the same race living together and coexisting together do better academically, just kind of like the conversation about girls and school, and maybe having all girls schools and all boys schools, just to provide an environment where girls would excel and not have to either be squashed by boys, or that they would just be an environment that allows them to be them, and it would be a great idea. So regardless of both of those, my question is about why, today's 2016, it's February 3rd, and the conversation about race still hasn't happened. We got bits and pieces of it. We have bits and pieces of conversation that maybe comes up because there's something in the news that causes people to react. But in general, in our homes, in our lives, in our everyday lives, most people are not talking about race, unless maybe you are a person of color, and because your daily experience revolves around race, because of how you're perceived out in the community. And so I feel very strongly, and I always have, I look white. I know that. I'm not blind to that. But I also am Mexican. And I was raised by a little Mexican lady who talked like this. This is my mother. She is very, very kind to me. And that was what I grew up with. And my identity is so tied to being Mexican that I don't know. I don't have another lens to look through my life with. And so although I have experienced and received the privilege of being white on the outside, I have also been witness to how other people treat Mexicans and blacks and others, and that white privilege has given me a perspective that allows me to see how people treat others, and it really is bearing witness to this dichotomy of what is what is race and what is colorblind, and what is being just a kind human being, and not judging people based on what they have to offer, what color their skin is, and just treating people with equality, with respect, and human dignity. And so I'm angry. I'm angry at this idea that we collectively, in media, don't want to talk about this and feel like, oh, we've come such a long way, and well, gosh, it's not my fault that blacks aren't writing scripts and in Hollywood, and it goes back beyond that. It goes just like rewind. If we could just please rewind, look at the history of the United States. Look at the history of how we've treated people, how we've treated immigrants. At some point, we all have to take responsibility for that. And so the idea of a colorblind society where, we shouldn't talk about the fact that Cam Newton is a black quarterback. Yes, we should, because you know what? For that kid who wants to be a quarterback, he has someone to look forward to, someone to look up to and say, you know what, he can do it, so can I. And that kid may not have any other representations of people that look like him, and this is this one example, or, you know, of a quarterback in the NFL that made it. And that's hope. And if we don't have hope across the board, what do we have? Seriously, I don't know. Because I know that hope keeps me going. Hope for a better world keeps me going. Hope for a kinder, gentler world that I can give my children, that I can show them what kindness and love and integrity is, and how we don't judge people based on the money they have, the money they don't have, the education they have, the education they don't have, the accent they have, the color of their skin. It's my responsibility. But not only is it my responsibility to teach my children, it's also my responsibility to, I feel compelled to educate everyone else. Because the person that says, yeah, why do we have to say black? You know, why is it such a big deal that we have to really enunciate that he's a black quarterback? Well, because there aren't many. That's why. And I guess maybe when the playing field is like level, we're like, oh yeah, they're black quarterbacks, they're black CEOs, or, you know, black presidents of companies, or black movie directors and producers and writers, and when it looks like there's balance, and not just the perception of, like, you know, there's one black guy or one black woman who's like on the news. That's not balance. I'm talking about where it becomes a non-issue because everybody has the same opportunity, and we know that's not true. We can go backwards. We can just look at Southern California. We can look at Los Angeles. We can rewind. Look at, you know, I live in Los Angeles. My kids go to LAUSD, but our LAUSD is different than the LAUSD in downtown LA. Why? Because that's an urban area. It's mostly lower income, and I live out on the west side where it's, you know, upper echelon. It's, you know, people who have money. And we don't have black teachers. Like, we have a coach, and we're woo. And then we got some coaches that are at the high schools or at the community centers. But yeah, that okay. But where are the teachers? Where are the families? I don't know. I look at all the little people waiting for the bus, and they're Latinas. You know, they're the nannies. They're the housekeepers. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that, but how do they get treated? And that's what it comes down to, is how do we treat people with respect? How do we give them a living wage? Why would I compromise what I would pay, you know, a white 20-year-old versus a Mexican, you know, 45-year-old with children? And if I'm paying this person $20 an hour to take care of my kid, and I'm paying this person $15 an hour to take care of my kid, there's something wrong with the math. There's something wrong with my thinking, and that happens every single day. Every single day. And these women, they work their asses off. They work hard. They take care of your children. They love your kids. They make your life easier. And it just seems like it would be a reciprocal relationship, not an us versus them, our family versus her family. Like, I think that if you're making the investment and you're putting your children in the care of another human being, you better love that person. You better know the details of their life. You better know their family. You better know what they're coming home to, every time they walk out the door, what their circumstances are. Are they waiting in the bus at 4:30 in the morning to get to your house by 7 a.m.? And it's about having compassion for that, and having understanding for that, and maybe making some accommodations. Because for people that have wealth and have privilege, there are certain things that just happen, that just present themselves. That's not the case for everybody else. It just isn't. It's the circumstances for this woman who's taken the bus at 4:30 in the morning to get to work by 7 o'clock, to take your kids to school and make them breakfast. That means she's leaving her family at 4:30 in the morning and not getting home until 7:30 at night, or whatever it is, because you're going out to a dinner date, or because you're going to a meeting, or you're going wherever. And I just see that we have to really challenge ourselves and our kids to be respectful, to be conscious as just human beings, and talk about the disparities. because they're disparities. We don't have an even playing field. We don't. I mean, who wants to argue that? There's no argument. There's no fact that says we all have the same opportunity. It's not true. And if you believe it's true, then show me. Tell me. Because I can rewind all the way back to healthcare issues, to school issues, to housing issues, to treatment. Because you know what? I don't have to tell my children to, hey, watch out when you see a police officer and just, be respectful, be kind, and don't do anything suspicious. But what is America talking to their black teens about? They're saying, listen, it's dangerous out there, son. If you see a police officer, please, please don't make them feel suspicious about anything. Don't, because why? Because kids, black African-American boys are overrepresented in police shootings. They're overrepresented in the penal system. So are people of color. This is an issue. So please challenge yourself. Challenge yourself to think outside the box. Challenge yourself to go against what is comfortable for you and educate yourself to the next level to see, wow, you know what? We do have differences and we do have similarities. And wow, I have privilege. Because it's important to acknowledge that. I'm not saying you have to sacrifice your privilege and you have to surrender what you've worked for and what you have. And it's not about that. It's about just being conscious, being mindful, and not fighting the fight. It's like, oh yeah, race is not an issue. Because it doesn't affect you maybe, but it affects me. It affects my friends. It affects my family. Of course it's an issue. Every single day. And the more sick you are of hearing about it, is you can just imagine exponentially how frustrating and how exhausting and how mind-consuming it is to be on the other end of that. Having to be protective, having to be hypervigilant, having to challenge the odds, having to go against what people perceive you to be. I say it takes away. It takes away from a human being to be under the microscope like that or to be treated with suspicion, for anyone. And so let's acknowledge it. Let's just notice. Let's notice. Walk into a room. Who's there? Who's not there? I think that's important. And it's not to say that you have to, always try and write it, but just be conscious of it because that's at least a start. So that maybe, our kids are going to grow up and be like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, my friend didn't have the same experience that I had. And gosh, they came from over here and wow, I didn't even think about that. So let's think about it. Maybe we can come up with a solution. Maybe we can figure out, what it's going to take. But the conversation has to continue. It's not just over because you're tired of hearing it or because it doesn't really affect you. I said it affects us all. And it doesn't just go away because it got 50 seconds on a television show, or because the news are bringing it up, or because someone, is talking about it on a talk show. I mean, it's bigger than that. You ask any academic scholar, you ask, people of color, why don't you ask the question? If you're curious, if you don't understand the race issue, and say, gosh, you know what? I was thinking about this. I really don't get this piece. What does this mean? And be open and listen. Because if you listen, that's where you're going to hear what is real, not what your perception is, not what you think it is, and not how you imagine it to be. You can hear and be in an intimate conversation with another human being about what it feels like to be a person of color in the United States of America on February 3rd, 2016 and on. Thank you. Sorry this is a rant. I'm a little agitated. I'm a little upset. But, I'm working through it. Thanks.